A billionaire goes undercover as a janitor. A poor girl feeds him, unaware of the truth. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, it is free, and it is the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories like this one. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from today? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. Every morning at exactly 6:15, the elevators in the Meridian office tower began to hum, not with executives or assistants, but with cleaning crews starting their shift before the building came alive. Among them was a man no one noticed. He wore a faded gray janitor uniform, sleeves rolled to his forearms, a pair of worn gloves tucked into his back pocket. A cleaning cart rattled softly as he pushed it across the marble lobby, mop bucket sloshing with soapy water. To everyone else, he was just another janitor, but his name was Daniel Wright, and on paper, he was the majority owner and billionaire chairman of the very building he was cleaning. Daniel moved slowly, deliberately. He had chosen this job himself. 1 full week. No security, no assistance, no special treatment, just observation. For years, people had smiled at him for the wrong reasons. They listened because of his title. They laughed because of his money. They praised him because of his power. After a brutal boardroom betrayal that cost him trust in nearly everyone around him, Daniel needed to know something simple and terrifying. Who would treat him with dignity if he had nothing? So he traded tailored suits for rubber-soled shoes, penthouse views for fluorescent lights, respect for invisibility. As he wiped down glass doors and emptied trash bins, he watched how people behaved when they thought no one important was looking. Some ignored him completely. Some spoke over him, as if he were furniture. One manager barked orders without once making eye contact. Daniel did not react. He only nodded and kept cleaning. By 10:30, the building was buzzing. Phones rang, elevators chimed. Coffee machines hissed like steam engines. That was when he noticed her. She sat alone at a small break table near the loading corridor, shoulders slightly hunched, eating from a simple plastic container. No phone, no distractions, just quiet. She could not have been more than her mid-20s. Plain sweater, cheap sneakers, tired eyes that suggested long nights and early mornings. Her name was Lily, though Daniel did not know that yet. He passed by her twice before she looked up. Their eyes met for a brief second. She smiled, not politely, not nervously, just genuinely. Daniel felt something shift. Later that day, as he cleaned the hallway outside the supply room, he felt a soft tap on his cart. Daniel turned. Lily stood there, holding a brown paper bag in both hands. "I noticed you skipped lunch," she said gently. "You have been working since early morning." Daniel hesitated. "I am fine," he replied, keeping his voice low. She shook her head. "No one is fine skipping meals." Without waiting for permission, she placed the bag on his cart. Inside was half of her lunch. A sandwich cut cleanly down the middle, an apple, a folded napkin. "I made extra," she said, though her eyes briefly betrayed that it was not true. Then she smiled again, stepped back, and returned to her desk before he could say another word. Daniel stood frozen. No cameras, no audience, no benefit to her at all, just kindness. He picked up the bag carefully, as if it were something fragile. For the first time since he started this experiment, Daniel did not feel invisible. He felt seen. Daniel did not eat the sandwich right away. He waited until the hallway was empty, then carefully folded the brown paper bag and placed it inside the small storage compartment beneath his cleaning cart. He returned to work as if nothing had happened, but something inside him refused to settle. For the rest of the afternoon, Daniel noticed things he had stopped noticing years ago. How heavy the mop felt after hours of use. How the smell of industrial cleaner clung to his clothes. How invisible a man could become when people decided he was unimportant. He watched executives step over wet floor signs without a glance. He listened as 2 managers discussed layoffs while laughing about lunch reservations that cost more than a week of groceries. And yet, one simple act kept replaying in his mind. "She noticed you skipped lunch." That evening, after the building emptied and the city lights flickered on beyond the glass walls, Daniel finally sat alone in the supply room. He opened the bag. The sandwich was plain. Turkey. Cheese. No fancy bread. It was the kind of meal made by someone who counted every dollar and still chose to share. Daniel took a slow bite. He had eaten in Michelin-starred restaurants. He had signed deals over dinners that cost more than most people made in a month. But this sandwich felt heavier, not in his stomach, but in his chest. This was not part of the plan. The plan had been simple: blend in, observe, confirm what he already believed. That kindness disappeared when money was removed from the equation. For years, Daniel Wright had built his empire on logic, data, and control. He trusted numbers more than people. Numbers did not smile while hiding knives behind their backs. 3 months earlier, his own board had proven him right. A secret vote, a failed takeover attempt. Men he had mentored, men he had defended, quietly trying to push him out of the company he built from nothing. They had smiled while shaking his hand. That was when something inside Daniel fractured. He did not need apologies. He needed truth. So he disappeared. Only his attorney knew where he was. Only one security officer monitored him from a distance, instructed never to interfere. This was not a game. It was a test. The next morning, Daniel returned at 6:15, pushing the same cart across the same marble floors. And there she was again. Lily arrived early, just like him. She moved quickly, organizing files, wiping her desk, preparing for a day that would not thank her for her effort. When she saw him, she gave a small nod. Not out of obligation, out of recognition. Daniel felt something unfamiliar, belonging. Later that day, he overheard a supervisor scolding Lily for a mistake she did not make. A report misfiled, a deadline missed by someone else. She did not argue. She simply apologized and returned to her desk. Daniel clenched his jaw, hands tightening around the mop handle. He could end this now. One phone call, one word. But he did not, because this was why he was here. At lunchtime, Lily opened her container again. This time, she glanced around first, then walked toward him. "I brought extra today," she said softly, placing another small portion beside his cart. "You work harder than anyone here." Daniel looked at her, searching for something. Calculation, curiosity, expectation. There was nothing. "Thank you," he said quietly. She shrugged. "Everyone deserves to eat." As she walked away, Daniel realized something that unsettled him more than betrayal ever had. If this experiment ended today, he already had his answer. And yet, deep down, he knew. The hardest part had not even begun. Lily did not think of herself as kind. She thought of herself as careful. Every dollar mattered. Every meal was planned. Every morning began with the same quiet calculation of how much she could afford to lose without losing everything. She lived in a narrow apartment 20 minutes away by bus, in a building where the hallway lights flickered and the walls carried every sound. The rent was late more often than she admitted. The refrigerator hummed louder than it should, mostly because it was almost empty. Lily woke before dawn each day, not because she wanted to, but because anxiety refused to let her sleep longer. Her mother had been sick for nearly a year. Not the kind of sick that brought casseroles and sympathy cards, but the slow, exhausting kind that drained savings and patience in equal measure. Medical bills arrived like unwanted guests, each one demanding attention, each one more urgent than the last. Lily worked 2 jobs, one during the day at Meridian Office Tower, one at night, cleaning a small neighborhood diner until her arms ached. She never complained. Complaining did not lower bills. At work, she kept her head down. She learned early that asking questions made people notice you, and being noticed made you vulnerable. So she stayed quiet, efficient, replaceable. Except when it came to food. Food was the one thing she refused to let become cruel. Her mother had taught her that, years ago, back when life still felt stable. If you have 2 bites, you share one. If you have 1 bite, you split it. That lesson had stayed with her longer than comfort ever had. When Lily noticed the janitor skipping lunch on the first day, she told herself it was none of her business. When she noticed again the second day, she told herself he probably preferred it that way. But by the 3rd morning, when she saw the faint dark circles under his eyes and the way he leaned slightly against the cart when no one was watching, something inside her tightened. Hard work recognized hard work. She did not know his name. She did not ask his story. She only saw a man carrying more weight than his job required. So she adjusted her own portions, cut sandwiches in half, saved apples she would normally eat later, told herself she could manage with less. She always did. That afternoon, after the supervisor blamed her for the misfiled report, Lily locked herself in the restroom for exactly 1 minute. She counted her breaths, fixed her hair, and returned to her desk. Crying wasted time. At lunch, she walked toward the janitor again, heart beating faster than it should have. "You should eat," she said, placing the container beside him. "You look tired." He thanked her quietly. No embarrassment, no pride, just gratitude. That surprised her. Most people either refused help loudly or accepted it with expectations attached. He did neither. As Lily returned to her desk, she did not notice Daniel watching her go. Not as a billionaire, not as an observer, but as a man slowly realizing how little he understood about strength. Later that evening, Lily stayed late to finish extra work. As she packed her bag, she overheard two co-workers laughing about a bonus pool. One of them joked that janitors should be grateful for leftover pizza at office parties. Lily paused, then she closed her bag and walked away. She passed Daniel in the hallway on her way out. "See you tomorrow," she said, offering a small smile. Daniel nodded. "See you tomorrow." He watched her disappear into the elevator, then glanced down at the container in his hands. For Lily, the food was a small sacrifice. For Daniel, it was a quiet accusation. Because in all his years of wealth, power, and influence, no one had ever given him something they could not afford to lose. And for the first time, he wondered if the real poverty he had been surrounded by was not financial at all. By the fourth day, the routine had settled into something steady. Daniel arrived at 6:15. Same uniform, same cart, same quiet movements across the lobby floors. But the building no longer felt the same, not to him. The brown paper bag had become a ritual. Each morning, Lily left her lunch on the corner of her desk while she organized paperwork. She never announced it, never made a show of it. When she thought no one was watching, she would divide it carefully, wrapping one portion with deliberate care. Daniel noticed everything. He noticed how she always waited until the hallway was clear before approaching him, how she placed the container on the cart, never directly into his hands, as if to preserve his dignity, how she never stayed long enough to make it awkward. "Do not skip meals," she said again that morning, almost like a habit. Daniel smiled faintly. "I will not." She believed him this time. What Lily did not know was that Daniel had not missed a single lunch since she started bringing them. Not because he was hungry, but because each meal felt like proof that his experiment had not been a mistake. He began to save the napkins she folded, the simple plastic utensils, the quiet notes she sometimes slipped inside without realizing it. One read, "Hope today is easier." Another simply said, "You matter." Daniel folded those notes carefully and placed them in his wallet, the same leather wallet that once held black cards and private jet access codes. Now it held something far more dangerous, perspective. As the days passed, he watched Lily more closely, not out of suspicion, but concern. She moved faster than everyone else, as if trying to stay ahead of something unseen. She rarely sat unless she had to. When she did, she rubbed her wrists absent-mindedly, the kind of gesture that came from exhaustion rather than injury. Once, Daniel saw her checking her phone repeatedly, her face tightening with each unread message. Medical billing alerts, he guessed. He knew that look. He had seen it in his own reflection years ago, back when survival still felt uncertain. That afternoon, Daniel overheard two supervisors speaking near the elevators. "If she cannot keep up, we will replace her," one of them said casually. "She works hard," the other replied. "But hard work does not always mean value." Daniel felt something cold settle in his stomach. This was the part of the system he had designed: efficiency, replaceability, profit over people, and Lily was standing directly beneath it. Later, as Daniel cleaned the stairwell, Lily appeared again, holding her container. "I did not bring much today," she said apologetically, "but it is warm." He accepted it. "It is more than enough." She hesitated, then spoke softer. "You work here every day. Does anyone ever say thank you?" Daniel paused. "No," he answered truthfully. She nodded, as if confirming something she already knew. "Well, thank you." Then she left, footsteps light, unaware that she had just undone years of carefully built emotional armor. That night, alone in the supply room, Daniel did something he had not done in a long time. He questioned himself. This had started as a test, a controlled observation, a temporary disguise. But control was slipping. He was no longer just watching kindness, he was responding to it. Daniel looked at the lunch container in his hands, then at the notes tucked safely away. If he revealed himself too soon, he would corrupt the truth. If he waited too long, he might allow injustice to continue. For the first time since he put on the janitor uniform, Daniel understood the real risk. Not exposure, attachment. And deep down, he knew the next few days would decide far more than the outcome of an experiment. They would decide what kind of man he would choose to be when the truth finally came out. By the 5th day, Daniel realized something had changed. Not in the building, not in the routine, but in him. He no longer woke up thinking like a billionaire running an experiment. He woke up thinking like a man expected to show up, to do his job well, to matter quietly. At 6:15, he pushed his cart through the lobby as usual. The marble floors reflected the ceiling lights, spotless and cold. Yet for the first time in years, Daniel felt grounded inside that space. People still ignored him. Some still spoke sharply. One executive nearly bumped into him without apologizing. Daniel barely noticed, because Lily was already there. She stood near the copy room, holding her lunch container, waiting until the hallway cleared. When she saw him, she approached with the same calm rhythm she always used, never rushed, never dramatic. "I made soup today," she said. "It keeps you warm longer." Daniel accepted it carefully. "You think of everything." She smiled, tired but sincere. "Someone has to." As she turned to leave, he spoke before he could stop himself. "Lily." She paused, surprised that he knew her name. "Yes?" "Why do you keep doing this?" he asked quietly. "You do not have much. You could save it for yourself." She studied him for a moment, as if weighing whether honesty was worth the risk. "Because I know what it feels like," she said. "To be tired and unseen. To feel like if you stop moving, everything will fall apart." Then she added softer, "Food helps. Even a little." She walked away before he could respond. Daniel stood still, soup container warming his hands. This was no longer kindness by habit. This was understanding. Later that morning, tension rippled through the building. Whispers near the elevators. Supervisors speaking in low voices. A sudden email announcing a leadership walkthrough scheduled for the following day. Daniel recognized the signs immediately. Corporate inspection. Top-level presence. His presence. If the inspection happened, his cover would be gone. At the same time, Lily was called into a meeting room. Daniel watched from the hallway as she emerged 10 minutes later, her expression controlled but pale. Another warning, another threat of replacement. He saw her grip the strap of her bag tighter than usual as she returned to her desk. That afternoon, Daniel overheard 2 managers discussing cost cuts. Lily's department was mentioned. Her name followed. "She is efficient," one said, "but efficiency does not equal necessity." Daniel felt the familiar urge rise, the instinct to intervene, to end this quietly and decisively. But he did not, because this was the moment his test demanded the most restraint. At lunch, Lily approached him again, but this time her smile was forced. "I might not be here much longer," she said lightly, as if discussing the weather. Daniel's chest tightened. "Why?" She shrugged. "Sometimes being good is not enough." She placed the container on his cart, smaller than usual, nearly empty. "This might be my last extra," she said, "so do not skip it." Daniel closed his fingers around the container. In that moment, the experiment crossed a line. This was no longer about observing human nature. This was about allowing harm to continue in the name of truth. That evening, long after Lily had left and the building quieted, Daniel stood alone in the supply room. He opened his wallet and removed the folded notes she had written. He read them slowly. "You matter. Hope today is easier." For years, Daniel had believed power came from control. Now he understood something far more dangerous. Power also came from timing, and the next move he made would change Lily's life forever. The 6th morning arrived heavier than the rest. Daniel felt it the moment he stepped into the Meridian office tower. The air was sharper, voices were quieter, movements were tighter, as if the building itself was holding its breath. Inspection day. Executives arrived earlier than usual, shoes polished, jackets pressed, smiles carefully practiced. Supervisors walked faster, clipboards in hand, whispering instructions that sounded more like warnings. Daniel pushed his cart through the lobby, head lowered, posture unchanged. But inside, his thoughts were racing. This was the moment he had planned for, the natural endpoint of the experiment. And yet, nothing felt controlled anymore. He spotted Lily near the copy room, speaking with another employee. Her shoulders were squared, but her hands gave her away. She twisted her fingers together, the way people did when they were trying not to show fear. When she saw Daniel, her expression softened just slightly. She did not bring food that morning. Instead, she simply said, "Busy day," and forced a small smile. "Yes," Daniel replied. "It is." That was all. The inspection began on the upper floors, moving downward. Daniel knew the schedule by heart. He had approved it himself weeks earlier. By late morning, the executives would reach this level. Lily was called into another meeting. This time, she did not return quickly. Daniel cleaned the same stretch of hallway twice, eyes fixed on the closed conference room door. He heard muffled voices through the glass, a raised tone, a pause, silence. Then the door opened. Lily stepped out, face pale, lips pressed tight. She walked past Daniel without looking at him, straight into the restroom. Daniel waited exactly 1 minute, then 2. When Lily emerged, her eyes were red, but her posture was rigid. "They are letting me go," she said quietly, before he could ask. "Today." Daniel felt something break cleanly inside him. Not slowly, not gently. Now. "For what reason?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. She shook her head. "Restructuring, budget alignment, the usual words." She let out a short breath. "I was told to clear my desk by the end of the day." Daniel looked down at his cart, at the mop handle, at the uniform he had chosen. This was the cost of waiting. "This is not right," he said. Lily smiled faintly. Right does not always matter. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small container, smaller than any before. "I did not know if I should bring this," she said, "but habits are hard to break." She placed it on his cart one last time. "Do not skip meals," she said softly. Then she walked away. Daniel stood frozen in the hallway as executives passed him, discussing profit margins and operational efficiencies. No one noticed the janitor standing still, but inside that uniform was a man who owned everything they were talking about. And for the first time since the experiment began, Daniel knew exactly what he had to do. This was no longer a test of kindness. It was a test of courage. He pushed his cart into the supply room and closed the door behind him. With steady hands, he removed the gloves from his pockets. He straightened his back. The next time he stepped into the hallway, he would not be invisible. And when the truth came out, it would not be gentle. It would be just. The announcement came just after noon, an all-staff gathering, mandatory attendance, main conference hall. Daniel stood near the back as employees filed in, voices low, faces tense. The inspection had reached its final stage. Executives lined the front row, confident, composed, unaware of how quickly control was about to slip from their hands. Lily entered last. She did not sit. She stood near the aisle, holding a small cardboard box filled with her belongings, a notebook, a framed photo of her mother, a sweater folded with care. Daniel watched her from across the room. She had already been erased. The chief operations officer stepped onto the stage and cleared his throat. "Thank you all for coming on short notice," he began. "As part of our ongoing restructuring efforts, leadership has been reviewing operational efficiency across departments." Daniel recognized the language. He had written it himself once. "As we move forward," the executive continued, "we want to reaffirm our commitment to excellence, accountability, and—" The doors at the back of the hall opened. Every head turned. Footsteps echoed across the floor. Slow, deliberate. Daniel walked forward, not in a suit, not yet, still wearing the janitor uniform. A few people frowned. Someone whispered. A supervisor moved as if to stop him, then hesitated. Daniel reached the front row and stopped. "Daniel?" the chief operations officer said, confused. "Sir?" Daniel looked up. "Yes," he replied calmly. "That is my name." The room fell silent. He reached into his pocket and removed a folded badge. Not a visitor pass, not an employee tag, the executive recognition badge. Gasps rippled through the room. Daniel stepped onto the stage and took the microphone from the stunned speaker. "My full name is Daniel Wright," he said, voice steady. "I am the founder, majority owner, and chairman of this company." No one spoke. Lily's box slipped from her hands and hit the floor. "I have spent the past week working in this building as a janitor," Daniel continued. "Not as a stunt, not as a publicity exercise, but as a test." He turned slowly, scanning the room. I wanted to see how people behaved when they believed no one important was watching. He paused. What I saw was disappointing, and in one case, unacceptable. Daniel looked directly at Lily. She was dismissed today, he said, not for poor performance, not for misconduct, but because someone decided she was replaceable. The chief operations officer opened his mouth. Daniel raised one finger. "Sit down," he said. The man obeyed. Daniel continued, voice firm but controlled. "This employee worked harder than most of you ever noticed. She was respectful. She was efficient. And when she thought I was no one, she treated me like someone." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded napkin. "She fed me," he said simply. "Every day. Without asking my name. Without expecting anything in return." The room was motionless. I watched as supervisors ignored her contributions. I listened as her job was discussed like an expense to be eliminated. Daniel set the napkin on the podium. "Let me be very clear," he said. "This company does not remove people for being human." He turned back to Lily. "Your termination is revoked," he said, "effective immediately." Lily stared at him, stunned. "Not only that," Daniel continued, "you will be transferred to a newly created role reporting directly to me." A murmur swept the room. "This role exists for one reason," Daniel said, "to remind this company what dignity looks like." He faced the executives again. "Anyone who disagrees with this decision may submit their resignation today." No one moved. Daniel stepped back from the microphone. The janitor uniform no longer hid him. But the truth had never been about who he was. It was about who they chose to be when they thought it did not matter. The room did not return to normal after the announcement. It could not. People left the conference hall quietly, conversations muted, eyes lowered. Executives avoided one another. Supervisors suddenly found urgent reasons to be elsewhere. Lily remained where she was. Daniel noticed immediately. She stood frozen near the aisle, empty hands trembling slightly, as if the world had moved too fast for her body to follow. Daniel stepped down from the stage and walked toward her, no longer as a janitor, but not yet as something else either. "Are you all right?" he asked gently. Lily nodded once, then again, as if convincing herself. "I think so. I just did not see that coming." "That makes two of us," Daniel said. He gestured toward a side door. "Walk with me." They moved into a quiet corridor overlooking the city. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed traffic far below, people rushing through lives that had no idea what had just happened inside this building. Lily hugged her sweater closer. "I did not help you because of who you were," she said quickly. "I hope you know that." Daniel met her eyes. "That is exactly why this matters." She exhaled slowly, tension draining from her shoulders. "I was afraid," she admitted. "Not of losing the job. I have lost jobs before. I was afraid that being good still would not be enough." Daniel was silent for a moment. "That fear built this company," he said finally. "Efficiency without empathy. Numbers without names." He paused. "I forgot what it felt like to be on the other side of it." Lily studied him carefully now, seeing past the title, past the authority. "You did not forget," she said. "You just stopped listening." The words landed softly, but they landed true. That afternoon, Daniel kept his promise. Human Resources reversed the termination. The supervisor who initiated it was placed under immediate review. Policies were rewritten, quietly but firmly, and Lily was offered the new role. Not a promotion meant to silence her, not charity disguised as opportunity, a real position. She would work with employee support services, reporting directly to Daniel, identifying blind spots that data could not capture, stories that spreadsheets never showed. When the offer was explained, Lily hesitated. "Why me?" she asked. Daniel smiled, not as a billionaire, but as a man who had learned something too late and was trying to make it right. "Because you noticed someone when you did not have to," he said, "and because this company needs more of that." She nodded slowly. "I will try." "I know," he replied. "That is why I asked." Later that evening, as the building emptied, Lily packed her things again. This time, she did not carry a cardboard box. She carried possibility. She stopped by the supply room on her way out. Daniel was there, folding the janitor uniform neatly. "You do not have to do that," she said softly. "I know," he replied, "but I want to." He placed the uniform in the locker, then turned to her. "Thank you," he said, "for the food, for the honesty, for reminding me." She smiled, the same simple smile she had given him on the first day. "Do not skip meals," she said. Daniel laughed quietly. "I will not," he promised. As Lily stepped into the elevator and the doors slid closed, Daniel stood alone in the hallway. The experiment was over, but something far more important had just begun. The following weeks passed quietly, but nothing was the same. Meridian Office Tower still opened its doors every morning. The elevators still hummed. The lights still reflected off polished marble floors. But people walked differently now. They said thank you more often. They made eye contact. They noticed who stayed late and who arrived early. Lily noticed it first. Her new role did not come with a large office or an impressive title. Instead, it came with conversations. Real ones. Quiet meetings with employees who had never been asked how they were doing before. She listened. She took notes. She spoke up when something felt wrong. And Daniel listened to her, not as a chairman approving reports, but as a man relearning how leadership was supposed to feel. They did not rush anything between them. Some evenings, they shared coffee in the small break area near the windows. Other days, they simply exchanged a few words in passing. There was no pressure, no expectation, just respect. One afternoon, Lily arrived at work carrying a familiar brown paper bag. She placed it on Daniel's desk without a word. Inside was a sandwich, cut cleanly down the middle. Daniel looked up, surprised. "You did not have to," he said. She smiled. "I know." He took a bite, then laughed softly. "You know, this is still better than most business lunches." She laughed too. Months later, Daniel stood before the company once again. This time, the room felt different, lighter, honest. He spoke about values, about dignity, about how one unnoticed act of kindness had changed the direction of everything. He did not mention Lily by name. He did not need to. After the meeting, Daniel found her waiting by the elevator. "Walk with me," he said. They stepped outside into the evening air. The city glowed gold beneath the setting sun. "I kept something," Daniel said, reaching into his pocket. He unfolded a small, worn napkin. The ink was faded, but the words were still clear. "You matter." "I carried this all week," he said. "Then all month." Lily swallowed. "I forgot I wrote that." "I did not," Daniel replied. He took a breath. "I do not want to test people anymore," he said. "I want to build something real, with someone who already knows how." She met his eyes. "Are you asking me to help you work, or something else?" Daniel smiled, nervous for the first time in years. "I am asking if you would like to have dinner with me," he said. "Not as my employee, not as a symbol, just as Lily." She paused, then nodded. "I would like that," she said. They walked down the street together, unhurried, unnoticed. And for the first time, Daniel did not care who saw him. Because the greatest wealth he had found was not in buildings or numbers or power. It was in a simple lunch, freely given, and a reminder that kindness, when offered without knowing who someone is, has the power to change everything.